Hey guys, it's me. I just wanted to make a video about the music industry and help you guys to understand just how pretty horrible the music industry is and how much it like robs people and it just takes anything that is original and new and interesting and like corporatizes it, genericizes it, and sells it back to the general public without compensating the actual creative people out here. Um, it's kind of the music industry is a joke, frankly. The things that I know about music companies and how they work and operate, you would maybe a lot of you wouldn't be surprised, but I'm sure a lot of you would out there. So here's a story I want to tell you about a little piece of music that I wrote when I was probably about 14 on a guitar that my dad bought for me at a place called Sepp's Guitar World in Everett, Massachusetts. Uh, my dad got me a Les Paul when I was like 14 or 15, really cheap during very good economic times in America, probably the best economy that America had ever had up to that point. Um, so he was nice and he bought me a left-handed Les Paul that nobody else wanted because everybody at that point, all the kids wanted to play guitars that look like, ones that the guys in Metallica had or Dave Mustaine from Megadeth and all those like hair metal bands with the pointy guitars and everything. And nobody was playing Les Pauls except, at least not in mainstream music, other than like real guitar players like Slash from Guns N' Roses and older bands like Aerosmith and Ted Nugent. And nobody was interested in those bands much at that point, actually. So, but anyway, here we go. So I was listening to a lot of The Cure and the album Disintegration, which is still, I believe, one of the best major label albums ever made. And 17 Seconds, the Cure song, I think was a huge influence on this piece of music. That song still makes the hair on my hands stand up when I listen to it. I was sitting in the living room at a house in Stoneham, Massachusetts that I was living in with my parents, and we were renting. We lived there for a couple of years at 14 Brackett Avenue in Stoneham, Massachusetts. You can look that one up. And so I was just kind of noodling around trying to make something up that sounded like, I think, 17 Seconds, or something like uh, the Steve Vai's guitar work on the Public Image Limited uh, album that I'm really I've always liked. And I came up with this song that this piece of music anyway. It wasn't a completed song. It had no lyrics. It didn't have like, it wasn't a finished piece, but it had this verse. And then a chorus. Right? And it ended up being, I brought it to the guys that I was playing on the weekends with that I had met through the local high school that I went to high school with. And we had this band that we were up in the air about what names we were going to end up using, but we fluctuated between calling ourselves a few different names at that point in time. They had been calling themselves the Rhino Heinies when I joined up with them, and we were still kind of using that name, but we're like trying to decide on other names, perhaps, so that we could be taken a bit more seriously and perhaps play live. Um, so this is like 1990, definitely mid to late, like summer to like autumn, fall, fall in New England of 1990, and I'll play you a little bit of a 4-track demo that we recorded of it the next year once we had kind of like fleshed it out a bit and finished it off. We did a 4-track demo recorded by our bass player's brother-in-law in the basement of our drummer's parents' house. So let's play that a little bit, and then I just take a listen, and I'll talk about it afterwards. Like a little bit. Let's see if we can get some volume on this. Right, it's my opening guitar part, right? And the drums come in, the bass line. Right. So I wrote this on my guitar at home, and then this next part also. All right, so that's kind of like the basic. Going through some random garbagey lyrics. Um, so so that's kind of the basic premise of that whole song is those two parts that I came up with in the living room. Really, it's not much else that was thrown into the final finished song, and it ended up being called Skeleton. Right, that's the name of the track. Um, the first time we actually played live, that's me singing on it, by the way, as well. But the first time we played a real show at a club, we finished the set with that song, and everybody freaked out and loved it, and it was like a huge hit, at least locally in the Boston, suburban Boston music world, and probably to some extent, in the urban music scene, Boston music scene itself. Um, but anyway, so, but my point, we recorded later versions of that, like better quality. There are, there's at least one that's as good, if not better quality and better performance. Um, but anyway, here's the point that I'm trying to make. On August 27th of 1991, which was my birthday. Weird, huh? The very first Pearl Jam album was released, um, entitled 10. Now, I know for a fact that people who lived in the town, lived and worked in, and near the town of Stoneham and the neighboring town Melrose had ties to the Seattle music scene, which Pearl Jam kind of originated in. And, like, for instance, our recent guitar players, the Young Astronauts Club's recent guitar player's cousin worked for Sub Pop and, in fact, helped apparently negotiate the deal with Geffen that helped Nirvana released Nevermind, which became one of the biggest albums of the 90s. So, despite living in a very kind of isolated, remote suburb of Boston, which it was at the time, it was very well connected to the music industry and music world in America. Now, this is where I'm making this connection. The Pearl Jam album 10, which has a song in it called Black, which you hear a lot. I heard it in a record store just a few days ago, and it made me think of this. Like, oh yeah, okay. And I was talking to the guy who ran the store about it, and he probably thought I was insane. But anyway, um, let's play a little bit of the Pearl Jam song Black. And remember my song Skeleton, called, I ended up being called Skeleton, song that I mostly wrote. Um, I'll share co-authorship with other members of the band at that time with for that song Skeleton. I have no problem with that, because Gabe, the bass player, and Tim, the drummer, definitely helped finish it off, and even Glenn, the other guitarist and slash keyboardist that we worked with at the time, helped probably a little bit to kind of really put the finishing touches on that song. So thanks to those three guys, wherever you may be. Um, but now let's listen to the Pearl Jam song Black and compare it a little bit. This song came out on my birthday in 1991. I don't know if they were trying to tell me something. I think they might have been. Pearl Jam, if you guys want to get in touch with me and explain yourselves, I'm certainly willing to listen. So here's the Pearl Jam song Black. All right. Well, now keep in mind, this song is pretty much unlike any other song on that Pearl Jam album. Like, you can hear that, right? It's suspiciously similar. And even some of the lyrics are similar. That's like similar lyric, lyrically, lyric pattern, melodically similar, musically similar, drums are similar. Everything's similar. And then it drops down to that chordy, this power chord kind of thing. Anyway, I don't want to play too much of that because I don't want to have to. I don't want to put money in Pearl Jam's pocket. Honestly, that's the reason. Um, I never liked Pearl Jam, to be completely honest. I always thought they were kind of a fraud. Um, I grew to like that album much later after the fact and appreciate it for what it is. I don't really have a problem with derivative music necessarily, as long as it's not uh, sold to us as though it's this like gigantic original thing that which it isn't, you know, and it's not like this new thing. It's kind of like saying that, the monkeys are, the Beatles copied the Monkees or something. It's just the way I look at it. Um, I like the Monkees, but the Beatles were the real deal. You know what I'm saying? I like, for instance, I like the Pixies. I like Nirvana, but but the Pixies were the real thing. You know what I'm saying? Um, I like U2, but Susie and the Banshees and Television were like the real deal. Those people did it first, and like it's always the bigger, or what we're told are bigger corporate bands that get credited with coming up with these ideas when a lot of the time they're just derivative and they're taking ideas from other people and calling it their own, and it's a charade, it's a sham. But I'm here telling you that I based something that I wrote on music by The Cure and Public Image Limited and probably a bunch of other things that I can't completely remember right now. But I want you guys to know that at least. I'm not trying to say like I I'm like the most original person. I have the most original ideas out here. I am clearly influenced by other things, and you guys should know that. Now, the difference between that and what corporate bands and artists do is stark. It's a stark difference. This, these bands and musicians are merely trying to sell you something, and they're trying to take credit for something that they didn't really come up with, and kind of palm it off to you as though they're the real thing when they're not. It's derivative. The music industry essentially is a gigantic theft machine of other people's intellectual property, if you really get down to it. There's nothing that has come out in the last 25, 30, 40, 50 even years that isn't in some way derived from something else. And when we're told that these groups and artists are somehow, you know, this new creative force that is to be reckoned with, it's just really dishonest. And um, we really should be aware of that. Like, don't let these people kind of con you into thinking that they're brilliant because they're they're getting their ideas from other places, and then they're making sure that people in those other places have their ideas suppressed and have the credit for what they originated or might have originated taken away from them and given to someone else. It's really kind of like sociopathic. In fact, it's not just narcissistic, it's sociopathic, and it becomes psychopathic when the industry has a team of people who work for it who go out and like actively subjugate original creative people in order to diminish what they're doing and bring more attention to what the industry is selling as though it were the real thing. You see what I'm saying? And this goes back to like the 19 I mean it goes back a long way, I suppose. The Beatles themselves even used to get records from, this is what I've heard. If anybody has any further information on this, please let me know. The Beatles themselves used to get records sent to them from America by from DJs in the United States who would collect like these more obscure American artists and send the records to Lennon and McCartney in Liverpool, and they would pillage them for original ideas. Um, a lot of the bands that became bigger out of the punk scene in the late 70s, U2, um, are rumored, I can't make accusations, are rumored to have actively sabotaged other bands by like showing up at their gigs and pouring beer in the back of their amps and this kind of thing, so that they could be the only band left standing. You know what I'm saying? This is not how creativity flourishes, people. This is how creativity dies, and it's to me that's not what music is about. That's not what it should be about, and that's not what the music industry should be about. And this is why I believe the music industry is dying. It's almost dead, and it's pretending to still be alive. It wants you to think that it's still alive so that you are tricked into supporting it and feeding it and buying their same old product because they can't come up with anything ever anymore. Um, and if they steal stuff from other people, it just becomes exposed immediately anymore, like I'm doing right now. Which I should have done this a long time ago, but at least I'm doing it, right? Um, the theft just becomes very easily exposed now thanks to the internet. It gives a lot of people a way and proof um, to show that they came up with things first. And it's right there in front of everybody. It's not something you have to go search around in a copyright vault for anymore to drag up in front of a judge and that they can pay you off quietly for. It just doesn't work that way anymore. It's immediate, and that's why they're dying. Is because they keep doing this and they keep trying to suppress originality and they keep trying to cover up for the things that they've done and pretend that they never did these things. So um, music industry, you have a lot to answer for still, and until you start really admitting to what you guys have done to creative original people and to creative original ideas and the people who come up with them, you're not really going to move forward. You're just going to stay in the place that you are, and it's going to get worse and worse for you. And I don't know what to tell you, but maybe the music industry should die, frankly, and that would be better for music. And personally, I'd be fine with that because I never got into music for business purposes in the first place. I got into it because I have a creative force driving me to make something and share it with the world. And if that benefits me in an honest way, but if that benefits me in a way that is doing it honestly, then I'm absolutely, I welcome that. That's fine. But I'm not going to pretend that I'm something that I'm not, and I'm not going to pretend that other people are something they're not either. And this is just, by the way, this is just one instance of where this has happened to me. There are many, many instances, and I will go into them further. So, um, watch out for future videos about uh, the parasitic behavior of the major label music industry and its behavior towards me personally. And so, Nine Inch Nails, watch out. Foo Fighters, you guys, you guys have a lot to answer for. I'm serious. Even Kurt Cobain said about Dave Grohl that he's really good at copying other people's styles. Um, what can I say about that? You know, I that's happened to me. I mean, there's an entire album of Foo Fighters music that is basically virtually plagiarized from demos that I made with my with the drummer that I was playing with when I was like, you know, we were teenagers still, basically. Um, yeah, watch out, Chris Cornell. Even though you're dead, a bunch of your stuff is. I hate to talk ill of the dead. I'm not that sort of person, but the Chris Cornell catalog is rife with ideas that he did not come up with, that he did not originate, that are taken from other places, including yours truly. Um, Everclear, come on, really? You didn't write that. um, what else is there? YouTube. Shame on you guys. You know. Anyway, there's a bunch of stuff. I'll get to it all. I'm gonna keep making these videos. So, major label music industry. I'll put the nail in your coffin, and frankly, you deserve it. This is Michael Macintosh. Over and out.